The night my daughter-in-law's mother suggested I might be losing touch with reality and should probably be evaluated before I ruin my son's life. I sat very still, smiled politely, and decided I was done letting people mistake my silence for weakness. Because that night, over a table covered in white linen and arrogance, a wealthy couple tried to turn my love for my son into a mental condition. All because they thought I was poor. All because they thought I was desperate. All because they had no idea who I really was. My name is Laura Bennett. I'm 60 years old. To Ethan's in-laws, I was just the aging office lady on a tiny salary who took the bus and lived in a modest apartment. In reality, I am the regional director of operations for a multinational logistics company. I oversee 5 states, control budgets in the hundreds of millions, and earn $40,000 every month, not counting bonuses and stock. I can shut down a supply chain with one signature. But that night in that restaurant, they thought I was someone they could buy off with $700 a month and a fake show of concern. They were wrong. I didn't always have money. For most of my life, I had nothing but a stubborn spine and a little boy depending on me. Ethan's father left when I was 27. He stood in our tiny kitchen, fingers drumming on the peeling countertop, eyes avoiding mine. "Laura, I'm not cut out for this," Mark said. "The crying, the bills, the everything. I feel trapped." "We have a son," I whispered. "You have a son." He flinched. "You're strong. You'll manage." "I'm just not built for this." He left his wedding ring next to the dish rack and walked out with a duffel bag. I stood there with formula stains on my shirt and a baby in the next room, feeling like the world had snapped in half. I went back to work 2 weeks later, still bleeding, still sore. I was a receptionist at a small freight company, making just enough to keep us from being homeless if I never, ever made a mistake. Rent was $850. My paycheck was $1,400 before taxes. Every month felt like a game of chicken with the electric company. I learned to clip coupons. I learned to boil cheap pasta 16 different ways. I learned that mothers can run on 3 hours of sleep and sheer terror. I remember one winter day when Ethan was 3. The apartment was freezing because the heater had died, and the landlord couldn't get anyone out until next week. Ethan's nose was red, his little hands cold. We had $23 left until payday. I bought a small space heater at a discount store instead of groceries and made a pot of soup from whatever was left in the cupboard. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat on the floor, hugged my knees to my chest, and sobbed as quietly as I could. Then I wiped my face, stood up, and opened my old laptop. Into the search bar I typed, "How to earn more money without leaving current job." That search changed everything. I discovered words I'd never heard before. Logistics, operations management, supply chain optimization. I read until my eyes burned. If I could move from receptionist to operations, my salary could double, maybe triple. That night, I made myself a promise. You will never be this scared of money again. But no matter how rich you become, Ethan will not grow up spoiled by it. He will grow up knowing work, not entitlement. So I started taking night classes at the community college. Accounting I, business communications, introduction to logistics. It was hell. I'd finish a full day at work, pick Ethan up from daycare, cook, bathe him, read him a story, tuck him in, and then open my textbooks. I studied until midnight, sometimes until 2 in the morning. I drank cheap instant coffee and prayed my brain would absorb something through the exhaustion. Promotion by promotion, year after year, I climbed. Receptionist, administrative assistant. Administrative assistant, logistics coordinator. Logistics coordinator, operations supervisor. When I was 40, I moved to a bigger firm across town. When I was 45, I took a position as operations manager. At 52, I sat in a glass-walled conference room while the VP of HR slid a folder toward me. "Laura," she said, "we want you to be regional director. The salary is $40,000 a month. Bonuses and stock options will be discussed separately. We need someone like you in charge." I signed the contract with a hand that shook a little. That evening, I took the bus home to my small apartment, reheated leftover spaghetti, and asked Ethan how his day was. He said, "Fine, Mom. Work okay?" "Work was okay," I replied. And that was that. I didn't tell him. I didn't change apartments. I didn't buy a luxury car. Because my fear wasn't that he would know I had money. My fear was that he would stop understanding what it meant to earn it. So I lived quietly, simply. I drove my old Toyota. I shopped sales. I paid off all my debts. I built investments no one saw. To the outside world, I was just mom who works in an office. That was enough, until Ethan got engaged. Madison was lovely. The first time he brought her over, she stood in my small living room, taking it all in. The old couch, the mismatched chairs, the photo of Ethan and me at the zoo when he was 6. "It's so cozy," she said, with a bright smile and a tiny wrinkle in her nose. "I love how lived in it feels. My parents like more modern things, but this is homey." I smiled. "That's one word for it," I said. She talked about her childhood like it was a movie. Summers at the family lake house, ski trips in Aspen, private schools, tutors. Her parents, Richard and Evelyn Carter, were wealthy. Old money and new money mixed together like a dangerous cocktail. "Dad owns several car dealerships and some other investments," Madison said casually. "Mom handles pretty much everything else." "What does everything else mean?" I asked. Madison laughed. "Charity boards, brand partnerships, strategic relationships." She loves that phrase. I could hear Ethan in the kitchen pretending to be busy so I wouldn't see how nervous he was. I liked Madison. I really did. She loved my son. They made each other laugh. She didn't seem cruel, just sheltered. But every time she said, "my parents," something in my chest tightened. Because people like that don't just marry off their only daughter. They acquire family. On their terms. When Ethan told me they were paying for most of the wedding, I wasn't surprised. "I know you don't have much, Mom," he said gently one night over coffee. "Please don't feel bad." They insisted. I stirred my coffee slowly. "I'll give what I can," I said. "The rest is your journey, not mine." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "You've done enough," he said. "You raised me. That's more than money." He meant it kindly. He had no idea what those words did to me. My best friend Denise knew the truth. We met when we were both broke and renting rooms in a rundown house with peeling paint and noisy pipes. She became a lawyer. I became an operations nerd. We never lost touch. One afternoon, a few months after Ethan and Madison got married, we met for lunch near my office. She listened as I told her about the Carters, about the lavish wedding they planned, the honeymoon they insisted on paying for, the house they advised Ethan and Madison to buy. "They're generous," I said, poking my salad. "But it always comes with a story about how much it cost and how lucky everybody is to have them." Denise sipped her iced tea and watched me carefully. "Do they know what you do?" she asked. "What you really do?" Denise sipped her iced tea and watched me carefully. "Do they know what you do?" she asked. "What you really do?" "No," I said. "They think I'm a mid-level operations worker who makes enough." "And Ethan," she pressed. "He knows I'm in operations. He has no idea about the numbers." She leaned back. "You need to be ready, Laura." "For what?" I asked. "For them to realize there's no wealthy mother-in-law on your side to balance the equation. People like that don't like financial unknowns. They like assets they can predict and liabilities they can minimize." She reached across the table. "My lawyer brain is screaming," she said. "They're going to see you as a risk. And they will try to control that risk." I waved it off. "I can handle a couple of rich snobs," I said lightly. I didn't know then how right she was, or how far the Carters were willing to go. The call came on a Friday afternoon. I was at my desk, reviewing a vendor contract, when my phone buzzed. "Hey, Mom," Ethan said. His voice sounded tense. "Got a minute?" "Always," I said, saving my document. "What's going on?" "So, Mom, Madison's parents are in town," he started. "They want to have a proper sit-down dinner. Just you, me, Madison, and them. No cousins, no noise. Just family." I could practically hear the quotation marks. "Okay," I said slowly. "When?" "Tomorrow night. Baccarat's, downtown." I almost laughed. Of course they chose the most pretentious restaurant in the city. "They said they'll make the reservation," he added quickly. "You just have to show up." "All right," I said. "I'll be there." He was quiet. Too quiet. "Ethan," I prompted. "What are you saying?" He took a breath. "I talked to Mom, Evelyn," he said. "She asked about you. About your job. Where you live. She likes to be informed." "How much did you tell her?" I asked. "I said you work in operations at a mid-sized company. That you live alone. That you're careful with money." "Careful," I repeated. And then she asked, "You didn't grow up with much, did you? So your mother doesn't have much for retirement." His voice got tight. I didn't know what to say. "What did you say?" I asked. "I told her you manage," he said. "That you've always made it work." And she said, "We'll talk about that when we meet her. We need to make sure you're not being taken advantage of." The words hit me like cold water. "Taken advantage of," I repeated. "By whom?" "By you," he whispered. I closed my eyes. There it was. "They think I'm using you," I said. They think you might someday, he said quickly. Or that you might lean on us too much. Mom, I tried to defend you. I really did. But they're intense. My chest burned, but my voice stayed calm. It's okay, I said. We'll have dinner. We'll talk. Please don't be mad, he said. Just, please don't let them upset you. Mom, they can be harsh. Ethan, I said quietly, I've survived landlords, layoffs, and men who left me. I promise you, I can survive dinner. He laughed weakly. Okay. I love you. I love you too, I said. See you tomorrow night. I hung up the phone and stared out my office window at the city below. Denise's warning echoed in my head. They will see you as a risk. I decided something in that moment. If they wanted to judge me, I would give them the perfect test case. I would show up as exactly what they expected. Simple, modest, limited. And then I would see who they really were. Saturday night, I opened my closet and chose my armor. Not my power suit. Not the navy dress that made my board of directors sit up straighter. I chose an old, softly faded teal dress that hit below the knee. Comfortable. Plain. I added my gray cardigan, the one with slightly thinning elbows. I pulled my silver hair back into a loose bun. No salon styling. No necklace. No fancy watch. Just small studs in my ears. I left my structured leather work bag at home and took my canvas tote with the corner stain. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw what they would see. An older woman who stayed small. That hurt. But it also steadied me. Let's see who you are when you think I'm nothing, I whispered to my reflection. Then I called a rideshare and headed to Baccarat's. The restaurant was all glass, gold, and soft music. Inside, it smelled like money and butter. The host looked at me, then down at my shoes, and gave a polite but distant smile. Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting my son, Ethan Bennett. Party of 5. He checked the screen. His demeanor shifted. Of course. They're already here. This way, please. We wove through tables where people lifted crystal glasses and spoke in low, confident voices. I saw them at a round table near the window. Ethan, in a navy blazer and white shirt, looking sharper than I'd ever seen him. Madison in a cream dress, her blonde hair falling in soft waves. And then the Carters. Richard Carter sat straight-backed, salt and pepper hair cut short, his suit perfectly tailored. The kind of man used to shaking hands over deals, not apologizing. Evelyn, in a deep burgundy dress that hugged her figure just right, diamonds at her neck and ears, a bracelet that glinted every time she turned her wrist. They looked like money. The restaurant was all glass, gold, and soft music. Inside, it smelled like money and butter. The host looked at me, then down at my shoes, and gave a polite but distant smile. Good evening, ma'am. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting my son, Ethan Bennett. Party of 5. He checked the screen. His demeanor shifted. Of course. They're already here. This way, please. We wove through tables where people lifted crystal glasses and spoke in low, confident voices. I saw them at a round table near the window. Ethan, in a navy blazer and white shirt, looking sharper than I'd ever seen him. Madison in a cream dress, her blonde hair falling in soft waves. And then the Carters. Richard Carter sat straight-backed, salt and pepper hair cut short, his suit perfectly tailored. The kind of man used to shaking hands over deals, not apologizing. Evelyn, in a deep burgundy dress that hugged her figure just right, diamonds at her neck and ears, a bracelet that glinted every time she turned her wrist. They looked like money. Richard stood and shook my hand firmly. Pleasure, he said. We're glad you could make it. I sat down between Ethan and the empty space near the edge of the table. The waiter came with menus. Tonight's specials are on the insert, he said. We also have an excellent chef's tasting menu for $180 per person. I saw Ethan's jaw tighten slightly at the price. I opened the menu and scanned. What do you recommend? I asked the waiter. I'm not used to such a creative food. He smiled. Our salmon is excellent. The filet mignon is also very popular. Why don't we order a few things for the table? Evelyn said quickly. We can share. It's more communal. She took charge of the ordering seamlessly, like she was born doing it. As soon as the waiter left, she lifted her glass of sparkling water. To family, she said. To blending our worlds in the best way. Everyone murmured cheers. I took a sip and waited. The first blow came sooner than I expected. How was traffic? Evelyn asked pleasantly. Not bad, I said. I came by Uber. Oh, you don't drive? She asked lightly. I do, I answered. But sometimes I prefer not to deal with parking. What do you drive? Richard asked, more evaluating than curious. A 2012 Toyota Corolla, I said. There was a barely perceptible pause. Reliable, he said. Very, I replied. Small talk floated around for a while. Then Evelyn eased into her favorite sport, evaluation. So, Laura, she began smiling, tell us about your work. Ethan says you're in operations. That's right, I said. I've been in operations most of my life. What does that mean exactly? She asked. Administrative work? Logistics. A bit of everything, I answered, non-committal. I manage processes, people, and problems. That sounds stressful, she said. It must not leave much room for anything else. I manage, I said simply. She cocked her head. Ethan mentioned you've been at the same company for a long time, she continued. Job security is a blessing. Of course, those kinds of roles don't pay very much, but stability has its own value. I felt Ethan stiffen next to me. I've always believed in living within my means, I said casually. Simple life. Simple needs. Exactly, she said, her smile brightening. See, Richard? This is what I'm always saying. People don't need so much flash. We raised Madison with the best, but we never wanted her to lose touch with normal life. They lived behind gates with a private lake. Normal. Do you rent or own, Laura? Richard asked, as if inquiring about the weather. I rent, I said. Small 2-bedroom apartment. Same place for years. Oh, Evelyn breathed, a tiny frown. That must be hard at 60. Are you close to retirement? Close enough, I said. And you have savings, she asked. Evelyn, Madison hissed softly. Mom, really? What? Evelyn protested, feigning innocence. We're family. These things matter. We just want to make sure everyone is, okay? She looked back at me with that polished concern. I imagine your salary has always been modest, she continued. Office positions like that, you know. And with rent, food, inflation, she sighed. It must be a lot to handle alone. We don't want Ethan feeling he has to shoulder everything. There it was. The implication hung in the air. Poor mom. Limited salary. Potential burden. I took a slow breath. I've made it work, I said. We've had tight times, but we never starved. Ethan spoke up, his voice a little too loud. Mom's always been incredibly resourceful, he said. We didn't have a lot, but I never felt deprived. Evelyn smiled at him, then turned back to me. And now, she asked gently, as you get older, do you worry about age catching up? About work, health, all of that? I knew where she was going. No more than anyone else, I said. I take care of myself. I plan ahead. Her eyes sharpened almost imperceptibly. Planning, she repeated. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Our appetizers arrived. Soup in delicate bowls. Tiny salads that cost more than a normal week's groceries. As we ate, the conversation circled like a shark. Ethan has always been a giver, Evelyn said fondly. He has such a big heart. So responsible. We've just always worried he could be taken advantage of. Emotionally. Financially. She smiled at me, but her words were knives. When he was younger, she continued, he'd give away his lunch money if someone said they were hungry. Sweet, but naive. We don't want anyone to abuse that. I set my spoon down. I raised him to be generous, I said. Not stupid. I didn't mean, she began. You did, I replied evenly. And that's okay. Say what you mean. I can take it. There was a small, sharp silence. Richard cleared his throat. We're just being realistic, he said. Life is long. People get older. Sometimes they can't work like they used to. They might need help. It's normal. We just think it's important to protect Ethan from too much pressure. Pressure. That's what they called the responsibility of loving your mother. Evelyn leaned forward, lowering her voice like we were sharing a secret. Laura, she said, have you ever thought about what would happen if you couldn't manage your finances anymore? It happens. People start forgetting things. Making questionable decisions. Getting scammed. We've seen it so many times with older relatives. There it was. I'm 60, I said calmly, even though my pulse sped up. Not 90. Of course, she said quickly. You look wonderful for your age. But these things creep up quietly. Sometimes the person doesn't even realize. They start insisting they're fine when clearly they're not. They make emotional choices. They cling to people. They guilt their children. They use money, or lack of it, to keep control. Her eyes met mine, and suddenly the concern dropped. We just don't want that dynamic for Ethan, she said. We've worked too hard to see his future compromised by someone else's decline. Michael's fingers tightened around his fork. Mom, he said to her, you're making it sound like Laura is. I'm giving an example, she interrupted. I'm not saying she's there. I'm saying we should plan so she never gets there. Right, Richard? Richard nodded slowly. We've spoken to our attorney, he said. Just to understand options. Not to do anything. Yet. My heart thudded once hard. Options. I repeated. Such as. He shrugged. Like this was all very reasonable. For example, he said, setting up a small, controlled monthly support for you. Nothing demeaning. Something stable. Clearly defined. That way, Ethan doesn't feel torn. He knows exactly what he's responsible for, and you have predictable support without overreaching. And Evelyn cut in, tapping her finger on the tablecloth. We could make sure any large decisions, moving, selling, big loans, that sort of thing, have oversight. Just so no one can take advantage of you. Or use you to get to Ethan and Madison. There it was. They weren't just seeing me as a burden. They were framing me as a potential threat. A manipulator. A fragile mind waiting to crack. I looked at Ethan. He looked like he wanted to disappear. I didn't know they'd take it this far, he whispered. I placed my hand over his under the table. It's all right, I said. I'm listening. I turned back to the Carters. So you're concerned I may not be competent to handle my own life, I said slowly, and you've consulted a lawyer about how to contain the damage. Those are very loaded words, Evelyn said with a tight smile. We just want to ensure everyone is protected. Including you. She reached into her bag and, just like Denise had predicted, pulled out a folded document. She placed it gently on the table between us and slid it toward me. It's just basic language, she said, tapping it. Clarity. Expectations. A small monthly stipend. Boundaries. Ethan knows we were thinking about this. He did? My eyes flicked to my son. He looked sick. I didn't think they'd bring it tonight, he said. I told them it was too much. It's better to talk face to face, Evelyn insisted. We're all adults here. We can go over it together, Richard added. We're not forcing you. We're offering help. Help. Like I was already halfway to a nursing home. The rage that rose in me wasn't hot. It was cold. Clean. I smiled. Of course, I said. Let's talk about it. Our entrees arrived. Steak for some, salmon for others. The document sat like a loaded gun between the plates. I didn't open it. Instead, I asked a question. Evelyn, I said sweetly, may I ask you something? Of course, she said, taking a delicate sip of wine. How much did you say you spent on the wedding? I asked. She blinked, surprised by the sudden change of subject, then glowed. Oh, goodness, she said. Who even remembers? Between the venue, the food, the dress, the band, around $65,000. But it was worth every penny. It was magical. And the honeymoon? I pressed. 15, Richard answered. We wanted them to start their marriage with beautiful memories, not debt. So, roughly $80,000, I said. Very generous. When you love your child, Evelyn said, you give. That's what we believe. I nodded. I agree, I said. When you love your child, you give. I rested my fork on the edge of my plate. Can I tell you a story? I asked. It's just, Evelyn began, glancing at the document. We really should go through this while everyone's calm and... It won't take long, I said. And it might save your lawyer some time. I turned my attention fully to her. When Ethan was born, I began, I had $17 and some change in my checking account. Her painted eyebrows lifted. His father left a week after he was born. I had an apartment, a baby, and a job as a receptionist making barely enough to keep us off the street. I saw Madison's throat bob as she swallowed. For years, I continued. I worked during the day and took classes at night. I studied logistics, operations, management. I climbed every rung of the ladder with fingers that bled. I went from receptionist to administrative assistant, to coordinator, to supervisor, to manager. I let each title land. When Ethan was in high school, I accepted a position at a multinational logistics company. Lower title at first, but I saw the potential. I kept working, kept learning. I looked Evelyn straight in the eye. I am now the regional director of operations, I said. I oversee 5 states. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I have teams reporting to me across 3 time zones. The table went silent. My salary, I added, is $40,000 a month. Before bonuses. For a moment, even the clink of silverware from nearby tables seemed to fade. Evelyn's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. A tiny tremor ran through her fingers, a single drop of liquid sliding down the glass. Richard's jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle jump in his cheek. The hand holding his knife tightened, knuckles whitening. Madison stared at me like I'd just reached into the ceiling and pulled down the moon. Ethan's fork slipped from his hand and hit his plate with a sharp ringing clatter that made two people at a nearby table glance over. 40,000, he whispered. Every month. His voice didn't sound like his own. He looked at me, eyes wide, and in them I saw confusion, admiration, and a kind of grief for all the years he had no idea who I really was. I didn't tell you, I said gently, because I didn't want money to raise you. I wanted values too. I turned back to his in-laws. You looked at my cardigan, my tote bag, my apartment, and you assumed I was barely scraping by, I said. You assumed I might lose my grip on reality. You assumed I'd cling to Ethan for survival. You assumed I'd be tempted to use guilt and need to control him. I tapped the untouched document. And based on those assumptions, you consulted a lawyer about managing me. Around us, the restaurant continued in low murmurs and soft laughter, but at our table, everything narrowed. Faces, breaths, heartbeats. Even the candle flame between us seemed to lean in. Evelyn's mouth opened and closed twice before any sound came out. That's not, she finally stammered. You're exaggerating. You're twisting. I read what you wrote, I said. I saw the words emotional instability, questionable financial decisions, professional evaluation of competence. Those aren't the words you use for someone you respect. Those are the words you use for a case. Richard leaned forward, eyes hard. You expect us to just believe this? He demanded. That you make that kind of money? That you've been sitting on all this and pretending to be this? He gestured at my cardigan like it offended him. I don't pretend, I said calmly. I just don't perform. He snorted. Do you have any idea how much $40,000 a month is? That's almost $500,000 a year. I sign off on numbers larger than that before lunch, I said. You're not shocking me. A couple at the next table had stopped talking altogether. The woman was openly watching us now, her fork in midair. The man beside her glanced at my canvas tote and then at the Carter's stiff postures, trying to piece together a story with no context. Evelyn tried to recover her composure. Her controlled, country club voice came back, but there was a crack in it now. And if this is true, she said slowly, if you are what you claim, then why live like this? Why let your son think you're struggling? A sharper woman might have stopped there. But Evelyn wasn't done. She scoffed softly, lips curling. Unless this is some sort of game. A way to keep him feeling guilty. Needing to protect you. Some people don't know how to exist without being victims. I felt Ethan flinch beside me like she'd slapped him. Mom, he breathed. Stop. Her eyes flashed. I'm telling the truth, she said. Someone has to. This is all a little too convenient, don't you think? Poor, simple mother suddenly revealing she's secretly powerful and rich, right after being asked to sign boundaries? It sounds like a story. It was impressive in a way. Even confronted with facts, her first instinct was to protect her narrative. I leaned back and let my shoulders relax, a wave of tired sadness washing over the anger. There it is, I murmured. The real you. Evelyn's face flushed. You're accusing us, she said. But you lied by omission for years. To your own son. I didn't lie, I said. I chose what to share. Just like you choose to share your generosity story every time you open your wallet. She inhaled sharply. You think being wealthy makes us villains, she hissed. That's very convenient for someone playing the martyr. Stop, Ethan said again, louder this time. He was breathing fast. His hands were clenched together on the table. Ethan, you're emotional, Richard began. Of course I'm emotional, Ethan snapped, shocking all of us into silence. You just suggested my mother might be crazy. A few heads turned at the word, crazy. Richard looked around, suddenly aware the room was no longer fully ignoring us. Keep your voice down, he muttered. You're making a scene. You brought a legal document to dinner. Ethan shot back. You already made a scene. You just expected it to be a quiet one. Madison's cheeks were wet. I hadn't even seen the tears start. This is why we needed to wait, she whispered to her parents. You always push it too far. Evelyn sat a little straighter, like she was putting her armor back on. What we did, she said carefully, was try to protect all of you, including her. If she truly has this job, this income, this power, wonderful. But you cannot fault us for planning for the more likely scenario. The more likely scenario, I interrupted, where I'm a confused, needy old woman who can't be trusted with her own mind. We stared at each other for a long, suspended moment. You've been talking all night about support, I said finally, but you haven't asked me once if I actually need it. The waiter approached, hovering carefully at the edge of the table. "Would you like anything else?" he asked. "Or should I bring the check?" "The check," I said. "We'll take care of it," Richard snapped. "We invited you. A few minutes earlier that might have stung." Now it felt small. Petty. Like a child insisting on holding the toy they'd already broken. The check arrived in a discreet folder. Even from where I sat, I could see the total, $784.60. Richard opened it and pulled out a sleek, black and gold card. He slid it into the folder with a practiced flick and handed it back to the waiter without looking up. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Around us, the restaurant buzzed softly. Glasses clinked. A woman laughed from across the room. Somewhere, a fork scraped a plate too loudly. At our table, no one spoke. Evelyn stared at a point over my shoulder, face frozen in a mask of composure. Madison kept her eyes down, lashes damp. Ethan stared at his hands, now flat on the table, like he was afraid what they might do if he moved them. I could feel my own heartbeat in my throat, heavy and steady. A tiny part of me wanted to stand up, shout, cry, demand apologies. The rest of me knew better. You don't have to scream when the truth is doing it for you. The waiter returned, holding the black folder and the card. "I'm very sorry, sir," he said quietly to Richard. "This card was declined. It could be a security hold." The word declined sliced across the table like a blade. Two people at the next table definitely heard it. I saw the woman's eyebrows lift. "That's impossible," Richard said, his voice low but sharp. "Run it again." "Of course, sir." The waiter walked back toward the register, shoulders tight. Evelyn's nostrils flared. "It's the bank," she whispered fiercely. "I told you we should have called before traveling. They probably flagged something." Her voice was shaky. For the first time all evening, she was not in control. I sat very still and watched her. Funny, I thought. When it was my dignity on the line, she was perfectly calm. But the moment it might be her money, she trembled. The waiter returned faster this time. He looked even more uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, sir," he said. "It was declined again. Do you have another card?" Richard's face darkened. The vein in his forehead pulsed. He reached for his wallet with jerky movements, pulled out another premium card, a platinum one this time, and shoved it into the folder. The waiter nodded and walked away. More eyes were on us now. You can always tell when a restaurant's attention shifts. Conversations pause half a beat when a server passes your table. People stop mid-sentence, listen, then awkwardly resume with two bright smiles. I glanced around. A man in a gray suit pretended to check his phone while clearly watching us in the reflection of the window. A couple at the bar had fully turned their stools toward our direction. Evelyn's hand tightened around her glass. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "We have more than enough. This is some stupid security glitch." Madison's cheeks flushed. "Mom, maybe we should just—" "We are not making Laura pay for this," Evelyn hissed. "We invited her. She can afford it," Ethan said softly, almost to himself. Apparently, there was no pride in his voice. Just raw, stunned realization. The waiter came back a third time, and I almost pitied him. Almost. "I'm very sorry, sir," he said. "This one was also declined. It may be a system issue, but we do need another form of payment." The word decline seemed louder the second time. Someone near the door actually turned around to look directly at us. Richard stood so abruptly his chair screeched against the floor, making several heads jerk in our direction. "I'm calling the bank," he snapped. "This is unacceptable." He grabbed both cards from the folder and strode toward the lobby, shoulders stiff. Evelyn stared after him, breathing fast. "This has never happened before," she said, more to herself than to us. "Never." Her gaze flicked to me then, and for a split second, there was nothing in her eyes but naked humiliation. Then the anger rushed back in to cover it. "You must be thrilled," she said quietly. "We look like fools." I thought of that document. Of the paragraphs about my potential confusion, instability, fixation. And somehow, I honestly didn't feel thrilled. I felt tired. Deeply, deeply tired. "These things happen," I said. "People lose track. They get careless. It doesn't mean they're in decline." Her jaw tensed. I reached into my old canvas tote and pulled out my worn, brown wallet. From it, I took out a matte black, heavy metal card. No numbers. Just my name. Madison's eyes widened. "Is that," she whispered. "A centurion," I said. "Yes." The woman at the next table definitely saw it. Her eyes went round, and she leaned toward her partner, murmuring something. He gave the tiniest nod, like he knew exactly what that card meant. I placed it on top of the bill. When the waiter drifted back, clearly bracing himself for more conflict, I slid the folder toward him. "Could you put the entire amount on this, please?" I asked. "And add a 20% tip." He glanced at the card, did a tiny double take, and then straightened slightly, his demeanor shifting to something almost deferential. "Yes, ma'am," he said. Right away. As he walked off, I caught my reflection in the window behind Ethan's head. Gray hair. Simple cardigan. Canvas tote. Powerful card. I realized something then. I hadn't needed this moment to prove anything to myself. I already knew my worth. But they needed this moment, desperately, to be proved wrong about theirs. Evelyn stared at the card as if it were a weapon. "You waited for this," she said, voice low and shaking. "You wanted us to look small." "I wanted you to see yourselves," I replied. "This is just timing." The waiter returned, placing the folder and the card gently in front of me. "Thank you, Miss Bennett," he said. "Everything went through. Would you like a receipt?" "That won't be necessary," I said. He hesitated for half a second, then added quietly, "For what it's worth. That was very well handled." Then he moved away. I slid the card back into my wallet. Evelyn watched my hand like it had just swallowed her entire worldview. "You humiliated us," she whispered. "In public. In front of our son-in-law. In front of Madison." "I didn't ask your cards to decline," I said. "I didn't write that document. I didn't put those words about my supposed instability on paper. I didn't bring a lawyer into the conversation before we even had coffee together." I leaned forward slightly, keeping my voice low and calm. "I didn't humiliate you, Evelyn. You did that yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." Richard returned then, face tight, phone still in his hand. "The bank says it's an automated security freeze," he announced stiffly. "Too many out-of-state charges at once. It will be cleared by tomorrow." "Good," I said. "In the meantime, dinner is paid." He froze. "You paid?" he asked, like the idea physically hurt. "Yes." He swallowed. "Thank you," he said, each syllable dragged out from somewhere behind his pride. "You're welcome," I replied. "That's what family does sometimes. They help. No contracts required." No one spoke. Evelyn stared at the center of the table. Richard stared at the far wall. Madison stared at her lap. Ethan stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time, and like he both admired and feared what he saw. I stood up, picked up my tote, and looked at my son. "Walk me out," I asked. "Yes," he said immediately, standing so fast his chair almost tipped again. I turned to Madison. "You are not your parents," I said softly. "But right now, you're standing very close to becoming them. Think carefully about which direction you walk in." Madison burst into tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know they'd." "Yes, you did," I interrupted gently. "But you didn't think it would go this far. Now you've seen it. Decide what you'll do with that knowledge." I didn't wait for a reply. Ethan and I walked out together, leaving the Carters with their untouched contract and bruised pride. Outside, the air felt cooler, cleaner. We stood on the sidewalk, the city lights painting everything gold and red. For a few seconds, we just listened to the sounds of traffic and our own breathing. Ethan rubbed his face with both hands. "Mom," he said hoarsely, "$40,000 a month?" I smiled faintly. "Before bonuses," I said. "You'd be amazed what keeping trucks moving on time is worth." You've been carrying all this alone," he whispered. "And I let them," he swallowed hard. "I let them talk about you like you were weak. Like you were using me." "You didn't know," I said. "Now you do." He looked at me, eyes shining with tears. "I'm so sorry," he said. "For not asking. For assuming. For not seeing you." "You saw what I wanted you to see," I replied. "A mother who loved you and worked hard. That was enough." "It's not enough now," he said. "They crossed a line." "Yes," I agreed. "They did." He took a breath. "I need to talk to them," he said. "Really talk. Not like their polite son-in-law. Like their grown son-in-law who won't let them treat his mother like a hazard. I can't just let this sit." His shoulders squared as he spoke, like the decision itself was rearranging his spine. "Do you want me there?" I asked. He thought about it for a second, then shook his head. "No," he said. "If you're there, they'll focus on you. They'll perform for you. This needs to be me. And maybe Madison if she can handle it." "Are you sure?" I asked softly. He gave a shaky laugh. "No," he admitted. "But I'm going to do it anyway." My rideshare pulled up then, headlights washing over us. I reached up and touched his cheek like I used to when he was little. "I love you," I said. "I love you too," he choked out. More now than ever. Because now I know what you've done. I did what I had to do, I said. You do what you have to do now. I hesitated. Ethan. Yeah. If they make you feel like you're choosing between them and me, remember you're not, I said. You're choosing between control and respect. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. I get it, he said. I really do. I got into the car, rolled the window down halfway, and watched him through it, standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes burning with something fierce and new. Then I watched him turn around and walk back toward the restaurant. Not as the little boy I raised. As the man I'd hoped he'd become. According to Ethan, the confrontation started the second he stepped back inside. Evelyn was whisper arguing with Richard when he approached the table. The contract lay half-folded beside her wineglass, like a guilty secret that had lost its power. Sit down, Richard said tightly when he saw Ethan. We need to talk about what just happened. No, Ethan said. You need to listen. Evelyn blinked. She was used to him deferring, smoothing, apologizing after conflicts. Not this time. Don't take that tone, she started. You suggested my mother needed to be evaluated. Ethan cut in. You implied she might be unstable. You talked to a lawyer before you even had dinner with her. That document wasn't about helping her. It was about controlling me. They both stared at him. We were protecting you, Richard said. We have seen what happens when adult children get drowned by needy parents who can't manage their lives. My mother has been managing her life and mine since I was 2, Ethan shot back. She's never asked you for a dime. She didn't even tell me she makes more in a month than most people make in a year, because she didn't want money to define us. Evelyn scoffed. You're blinded by emotion. She manipulated you with that little performance. Poor, simple mom suddenly turning into a millionaire executive? It's theatrical. You looked it up, didn't you? Ethan asked, voice cold. They froze. You pulled out your phone the second she left, he said. Checked LinkedIn. Googled her name. That's why you were whispering when I came back. What did you find? Evelyn swallowed. Her profile is impressive. That doesn't change the fact that she lied by omission. She didn't owe you her resume, he said. You, on the other hand, owed her basic human respect. And you failed. Madison stood then, voice trembling. Mom, Dad, she said. He's right. Madison. Evelyn snapped. Not you two. I watched you, Madison said, tears streaking her makeup. You didn't ask Laura a single question about her life that wasn't about money. You made assumptions and then you treated her according to those assumptions. Even when she was quiet and kind, you poked at her like she was some weak thing. Language, Madison, Richard warned. No, she said. I'm tired of your language rules. I am not going to let you talk about my husband's mother like she's a risk to be managed. You're our daughter, Evelyn said sharply. We will not watch you be dragged into someone else's dysfunction. Whose dysfunction? Ethan asked. The woman who raised a son alone and built a career quietly? Or the people who think love needs contracts and evaluation clauses? Richard's face hardened. If this is the attitude you're choosing, he said, then we will have to reconsider how involved we are. Financially and otherwise. There it is, Ethan said. The real threat. He looked at Madison. Can you hear it now? He asked softly. This is what I've been trying to explain. It's never just love. There's always a bill. Madison's shoulders slumped. I hear it, she whispered. Evelyn looked between them, betrayal twisting her features. After everything we've done, she said. After the schools, the trips, the wedding, the house. You don't get a lifetime of obedience in exchange for raising your child, Madison said quietly. That was your job. Not a business deal. Richard exhaled sharply, like someone had punched him. The argument went in circles for a while. Accusations, tears, old resentments dragged to the surface. In the end, Ethan said one thing that stopped everyone. We're not cutting you off, he said. We love you. You're still our family. But from now on, you will not speak about my mother as if she is a problem. You will not write legal language about her without talking to us first. You will not imply she is unstable or dangerous. If you continue to do that, we will step back until you can control yourselves. Is that a threat? Evelyn asked. It's a boundary, he replied. You taught me how contracts work. Consider this mine. Later that night, after the yelling and the tears and the slammed doors, Ethan called me from his car. Can I come over? He asked. His voice sounded shredded. Of course, I said. I put on a pot of tea and straightened the throw pillows like he was still a teenager coming home late. When he walked in, he looked older somehow. Not in a bad way, just weathered. Like life had carved new lines into him. He sat on the couch and put his head in his hands. How did you do this alone? he asked quietly. For so long. I sank into the chair across from him. I didn't have a choice, I said. You do. He looked up, eyes rimmed red. I yelled at them, he said. I've never raised my voice to them like that. I told them they were wrong. That their money doesn't give them the right to diagnose or control people. Good, I said. Someone needed to. He laughed once, bitterly. They said you manipulated me, he said. That you staged that reveal to turn me against them. I didn't plan their cards declining, I replied. The rest? I planned to tell the truth if they pushed me far enough. They pushed. He stared at me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked. About your job. Your salary. Your card. The question had been waiting all night. I took a breath. Because I remember, I said slowly. I remember standing in line at the grocery store counting coins. I remember opening the fridge and seeing shelves of cold air. I remember the shame of late notices on the door. He was quiet. I also remember what money did to some people around me, I continued. How they changed. How their children stopped knowing what things cost. How they looked at people who had less. I looked at him. I didn't want that for you, I said simply. I didn't want you to think you had a safety net big enough that you didn't have to try. So you let me think you were poor, he said softly. I let you see the part of my life that mattered for your character, I replied. You saw a mother who worked. Who showed up. Who said no when she needed to. That was enough for a boy. The rest is for the man you're becoming. He swallowed. I feel guilty, he said. For all the times I worried about you. For all the times I thought, maybe one day I'll make enough to take care of Mom, and you were the one who could have taken care of me. You did take care of me, I said. In different ways. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to wake up. You gave me a future to build toward. But financially, money isn't the only kind of care, I said. If I had told you everything, you might have stopped trying so hard. You might have lived waiting for my help instead of building your own life. I'd rather you feel a little guilty now than resentful later. He leaned back, head hitting the couch. God, he murmured. You think so many steps ahead. It's literally my job, I said dryly. He actually laughed. Then he grew serious again. Thank you, he said voice thick, for not exploding at them. For keeping your dignity. I wanted to flip the table. Oh, trust me, I said. In my mind, I did. Twice. We both smiled. I poured us tea. For a while, we just sat there, sipping hot liquid and letting the quiet soothe the rawness of the night. Are you okay? He asked finally. It struck me that no one had asked me that yet. I'm tired, I admitted. This kind of fight takes something out of you. But I'm at peace. They showed me who they are. I showed them who I am. No more pretending. He nodded slowly. Mom. Yes. I'm proud to be your son, he said. Not because of the money. Because you could have turned into them. Controlling. Manipulative. Loud with your success. But you didn't. I felt my throat tighten. That was always the fear, I said. That I'd become what I hated. That money would turn me into someone I didn't recognize. He shook his head. You did it, he said. You stayed you. We sat in that truth for a while. It felt like healing. 3 days later, Madison came to my apartment alone. She wore jeans and a plain sweatshirt. No jewelry. No carefully constructed elegance. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like someone who'd been crying in her car before working up the courage to come upstairs. When I opened the door, she wrung her hands. Hi, she said, voice small. Can I come in? Of course, I said. She stepped into my little living room and looked around again. But this time, her expression had changed. Before, she'd seen cozy. Now, she saw choices. You could live anywhere, she blurted out. You could have something 10 times this. But you chose this. Yes, I said. I did. Why? She asked, honestly baffled. I gestured for her to sit. She perched on the edge of the couch, as if afraid to sink in. Because this is enough, I said. Because I like hearing the neighbors' kids playing through the walls. Because I know the names of the lady at the corner store and the guy who fixes our elevator. Because I don't need marble countertops to sleep at night. She stared at her hands. My whole life, she said slowly, my parents told me that success meant more. Bigger. Better. That if we could afford the best, it would be wrong to settle for less. She sniffed. They used to tell me stories about their childhood. How poor they were. How hard they worked. How they promised themselves they'd never go back. I believed them. I still do. But somewhere along the way, that turned into this. Measuring everyone by what they have. She looked up at me, eyes red. And I didn't just accept it, she said. I admired it. I thought they were strong. Powerful. In control. I never saw what it did to people on the other side of their standards. That's the thing about lenses, I said. You don't realize you're wearing them until someone shows you the smudge. She gave a watery laugh. Your son has your metaphors, she said. You raised him well. I smiled. We sat in silence for a moment. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she said finally. Not just for that night. For every time I let them talk about you like you were less. For every time I stayed quiet because I didn't want to upset them. I should have defended you. You were raised to keep the peace, I said. Peace at any cost. Especially the cost of your own discomfort. She nodded. I don't want to be like that, she whispered. I don't want to raise kids one day who think their grandparents' bank account is more important than their grandmother's heart. You can choose differently, I said. That's the good news. She took a deep breath. Ethan and I talked, she said. We're a putting distance. Not going no contact. Just space. No more surprise visits. No more financial strings. If they offer something, we'll ask what the emotional interest rate is before we accept. That will make them angry, I said. They already are, she said. But I'd rather have their anger honestly than their love as a reward for obedience. That was a very old soul sentence. I'm not asking you to choose between us, I said. They're your parents. You love them. That doesn't disappear overnight. But you do have to choose what kind of woman you want to be. She nodded. I want to be like you, she said suddenly. Not the job. Not the money. The stillness. The way you didn't raise your voice once, and yet somehow you were the loudest person at that table. I huffed a small laugh. You didn't see me in my 20s, I said. I was not still. Maybe not, she said. But you are now. And I want that. I studied her face. You can have it, I said. But it costs something. What? She asked. Saying no, I replied. To people you love. To patterns you were raised in. To the version of yourself that only exists to please them. She swallowed. I started last night, she said. My mom called. She cried. She said you turned Ethan against her. She said I betrayed them. I listened, and then I said, I love you. But Laura didn't do this. Your behavior did. That's the first time I've ever said something like that to her. How did it feel? I asked. Like jumping into cold water, she said. Terrifying. Shocking. But a clean. We both smiled. I reached over and squeezed her hand. I accept your apology, I said. Not because you owe it to me, but because it means you see things more clearly now. She nodded, tears spilling over again. And Madison? I added. I'm not your replacement mother. You don't owe me that. But if you ever want to learn how to live with less money on the outside and more peace on the inside, my door is open. She laughed through a sob. Thank you, she whispered. I think I'll take you up on that. We sat there a little longer, two women from painfully different worlds sharing the same small couch, breathing the same warm, quiet air. For the first time since I met her, I felt like I was talking to Madison, not the Carter heiress. Just a young woman, trying to untangle love from control. I still live in the same apartment. I still drive my old Corolla. I still carry my canvas tote most days. Not because I have to. Because I like my life this way. Quiet. Honest. Mine. Money bought me comfort and choices. It did not buy me dignity. Dignity I built myself. One long night. One hard day. One sacrifice at a time. And no one, not a lawyer, not an in-law, not a contract, gets to take that from me. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. The most dangerous people are not always the openly cruel ones. Sometimes they smile, send checks, and call their control concern. Sometimes they turn love into a transaction and expect you to sign at the bottom. Don't. No amount of support is worth selling your place in your own life or your child's. I survived poverty. I survived single motherhood. I survived the climb up a corporate ladder that wasn't built for women like me. I was not about to be erased by a contract and a monthly allowance. And neither should you. Now I want to ask you something. If you were sitting at that table, and someone slid a piece of paper toward you, offering money in exchange for your silence, your distance, and your cooperation, what would you do? Would you sign it and stay safe? Would you rip it up and walk away? Would you stay calm, tell the truth, and let their own behavior expose them? Tell me in the comments what you would have done. Your story matters. Your dignity matters. Your boundaries matter. If this story reminded you of someone who was made to feel small because they had less money, or of someone punished for becoming stronger, share it. Someone out there needs to hear that they are not a burden. They are not crazy for wanting respect. They are not for sale. And if you want more raw, emotional, real-life stories like this, Stories of mothers, of in-laws, of love and control and freedom. Make sure you subscribe, follow, and stay with me. Because money can make noise. But real power? Real power sits quietly, knows its worth, and never, ever signs itself away.